Hey guys, this is topic 6 study jam. Before we get started, I want to tell you there are a lot of DBQ questions on this test. That means there's a lot of reading and then answering the question. I would say skip those. Save them for the last. So one of the first things you're going to come to is a discussion on the differences in the settlements of Utah and California. You need to understand that California was settled due to the 1849 gold rush, and the settlements in Utah were established by the Mormons to escape religious persecution. Okay, on San Francisco, you need to remember that before the 1849 gold rush, San Francisco was just a little spot in the road. It really didn't exist other than basically a trading outpost. So with the gold rush of 1849, San Francisco transforms into a huge economic hub. That means it becomes the center of trading, commerce, and the beginnings of the city. So what is the Tariff of 1828? The Tariff of 1828 was referenced by the South as the Tariff of Abominations. It was created to be more of a support to manufacturing in the North. Remember, the South didn't manufacture much. They were agricultural. So it hurt them and helped the North. Henry Clay proposed a compromise on the tariff that eventually kind of eased the tension between the two of them. The Tariff of 1828 is where we also began seeing a discussion of secession. With the Tariff of 1828, South Carolina tried to declare that tariff null and void. This is what we refer to as the nullification crisis. South Carolina wanted to say that it was not fair, and therefore they weren't going to support it in their state. Now, Daniel Webster believed that the Constitution represented all the states and the American people, so that if South Carolina nullified, other states would then follow in its lead and would eventually cause the nation to just fall apart state by state. Okay, with the election of 1840, we have a candidate by the name of William Henry Harrison. He had been a war hero in the Battle of Tippecanoe, which was a Shawnee-led fight in 1811. The Whig Party was hoping to cash in on the favoritism of war heroes. After all, Andrew Jackson had won the presidency on the idea that he was a war hero from the Battle of New Orleans. So this way they had another larger-than-life candidate, similar in the footsteps of Andrew Jackson in the way of popularity. President Jackson and the National Bank. Remember, Jackson grew up very poor and was against anything that stood for great amounts of wealth, including the bank. He felt that the bank's role in federal government was unconstitutional and did everything that he could to make sure that the banks didn't happen. You also need to remember for the Trail of Tears that one of the big key factors in the hardships is the long distance that the Native Americans were forced to travel. They didn't travel this by train or plane or bus. They had to walk it. So keep that in mind. Okay, so with Jackson's presidency, we have two things to look at. We have the Indian Removal Act of 1830 and the Supreme Court case of Worcester versus Georgia. How would these two be contradictory to each other? Well, keep in mind that the Indian Removal Act ignored the fact that the lands belonged to the Indians and were a sovereign country, not technically part of the United States. The Supreme Court ruling in Worcester versus Georgia said that it was their own country, and Jackson was not going to honor this. They wanted the land. We've not talked much about Daniel Boone, but he's going to show up on your test. Basically, you need to know that he led settlers west of the Appalachian Mountains. He was a frontiersman. He knew the way, so he would often lead many settlers out west to their new lives. Also, it mentions the Lancaster Turnpike. Remember, if you're going to compare the Lancaster Turnpike to the National Road, that the Lancaster Turnpike is limited in travel to one state. The national road covered many. Okay, guys, you'll be asked some questions on steamboat design. Remember, a steamboat is designed to transport heavy loads along a shallow river. Also, when we talk about the mountain men, keep in mind that they use their knowledge to help settlers get through the mountains and into the Oregon and Washington countries. Okay, so why Oregon country instead of the Great Plains? Well, the Great Plains was way too dry for farming, and most of the Oregon country had mild temperatures with lots of rainfall. Also, an idea here, why did Mexico ban slavery? Thoughts? Well, they banned slavery so that large American plantation owners would leave, which left it to the smaller farmers. Okay, we've talked a little bit about the election of 1824 and how it went to the House of Representatives. Well, at that time, the House of Representatives, the leader was Henry Clay. Henry Clay pushed for John Quincy Adams to become president. Quincy Adams did eventually win the vote of the House of Representatives. And when he did, he turned right around and made Henry Clay Secretary of State. We definitely would say that that's a little fishy. Another issue that divided political parties at this time, of course, was tariffs. We talked about the Tariff of Abominations. Spoil system done by Andrew Jackson. Basically, you go in, you remove all the government officials, and you give government positions to your friends and family. One of the important things to know about this is this was only men could hold government jobs. At this time, no women and actually no minorities, only white men. When we get to the presidency of Martin Van Buren, he is blamed for a large economic depression. The reason of this is there was a lot of debts from fighting with various Native American groups, and the country couldn't pay off these debts.